Welcome to the Origin Story, an Eko-Podcast series brought to you by the Goethe-Zentrum Hyderabad and EkoGalaxy, in collaboration with Roundglass Sustain. The Origin Story is created in the hope that we live in and leave a planet that is more just, more joyful, and more diverse across lands, oceans, and species. We bring conversations with giants in the field, those who've walked the uncharted path and done right by the beautiful biodiversity of our shared planet. What were their early connections to the natural world? How did they come to be the person they are today? And what are some of the lessons for the rest of us towards building a better world? In this episode, we bring you the world's leading soil scientist, Dr. Ingrid Kögel-Knabner, in conversation with pioneering soil biologist, curriculum and policy expert, Dr. Sultan Ismail. And once again, thank you for your interest in our planet, biodiversity, and closely interlinked our own well-being. Thank you for listening.
Hello, Professor.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we are in different phases.
Yeah, I know.
It's wonderful to see you, Professor. And what brought you into soils?
I started a new topic at the University of Bayreuth, which is in Bavaria in Germany. And I had the opportunity to choose during my studies geoecology. It was very new, and I had the opportunity to do either to focus on hydrology or to focus on soils. And I focused on soils because, first of all, I had a very good professor, a very good teacher who really inspired me looking in detail on soils. And secondly, because soils is something you can touch, you can work with your hands, you can see. And when you look at the soil profile and see the variability of soils depending on parent material and climate and so on, it's getting very exciting seeing these differences and the differences in fertility, in properties, in soil formation processes. So I got really inspired with that. And in addition, soil profiles have a kind of aesthetic value. They have different colors and different textures.
Professor, you mentioned the term geoecology. That sounded something new to me because we say ecology. And I think probably in contrast to hydroecology, you would like to call it as geoecology when it comes to terrain.
Yeah, geoecology was a new subject that was introduced at my university with a specific focus of course ecology and ecologic topics, but having this connection to the geoscience part. And this then leads immediately to soil science.
That's something very interesting. Even before that, probably you would have had some interest, right, Professor? Some incident which happened in my life, I'm trying to recollect, is as a kid, I was walking with very strong thumping on the ground with my legs. And my grandfather was sitting outside. He suddenly said, "You're not supposed to hit the earth by thumping your feet." I said, "So what? It's only a soil." He said, "No, it is the soil which gives us everything." So there was this wisdom about the soil in the elder generation. Probably somewhere we lost.
Yeah, maybe. Only few people, at least in Europe nowadays, work directly with the soil. 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, a large part of the population worked in agriculture and worked directly with soils. And this has changed completely. Only 1% of our population works directly with the soil. So many do not have a direct connection to the soil. They never touch it, they never feel it, and this is a pity because if you do, you learn a completely new world.
Don't you think, Professor, that when I look at the number of people carrying binoculars, bird watching, and the number of people really interested to work what is beneath their feet, There is something wrong in our concept of ecology. We get carried away with what is visible to us. We are not interested to know what is silently working for us. And also, Professor, I think if I go back to your childhood, when you were a kid and you were studying in school, how often do you think that we were playing with the soil? It was almost every day.
No, I don't think so. When you are a small kid, yes, but with continuing education, you lose this connection more and more.
But as a small child, you were playing with the soil, right?
Yeah. I come from a small village.
We all played with the soil. Today, parents don't allow their children to touch the soil.
Yeah, because they think it's a problem, a health problem, or whatever. But nowadays, we realize that our gut microbiome, that is very specific to specific region and to specific people, is influenced by what we eat anyway. So even if you clean your vegetables and everything, there is a transfer. And this is a new topic that is just starting to be explored, how the soil affects your microbiome, and this then affects your health. So soil and health are directly connected, although at the moment we do not really understand these connections yet.
I do agree to what you are saying, Professor, about soil micro, because even here, because the soil has lost its nutrients over a period of time. It has lost some of the important micronutrients also in the soil. So the crop which grows on the soil is not having sufficient micronutrients in it. See, today iron, if I look at India, for example, we eat rice a lot. We depend on rice. And unfortunately, in the past 50 years, we have lost about 27% of iron from our rice. So the population which is largely depending on iron is becoming anemic. How do you feel that we can try to improve upon all this by improving the quality of food, which can compensate and bring good health in this growing population?
This is a general problem, especially in regions where the soils are strongly weathered. They are quite old. In Europe, the soils are quite young. So we have micronutrient problems, but not as strong, just because the soils have developed after the last ice age that we had. So our soils have an age of 12,000 years maximum, most of them. In areas where you have old landscapes and a strong weathering and a long time of weathering, some of the nutrients are more or less gone. So we have to replace them. So fertilization is obviously necessary if we want to produce high yields. And high yields are again necessary to store carbon, but also to feed the population.
Sometimes I try to disagree on this, Professor, because today the world, somehow there is food security. There's enough amount of food that is grown by diversity of crops, etc. But the problem which I face in my country is nutrition security. Food is available, but there is no nutrition in the food. Rice is available, but there is no calcium or iron in the food. So instead of taking care of the soil, unfortunately, our government here is planning to fortify the food. That is, after harvesting rice, they would like to powder it, add vitamins B6 and B12 into it, add iron into it, reform it in the shape of rice, mix with the general rice, and give it to people to improve iron content. However, it has not improved any anemic condition because, as you rightly said, the gut microbe have gone down. They are not able to absorb the synthetic iron we are able to feed by adding iron. It is iron which is assimilated in the crop, which is nutrition. That provides real iron. I think probably you are yet to face that problem. But we, because of weathering, high weathering and large usage of chemical fertilizers in our soils, the soils have really lost their fragrance, their potential, their nutrient content. And I think it's time that we all throughout the world unite together to see to it, because soil is a basic biome on which any crop has to grow. You being in that stage where you're looking at microbes, how would you suggest that we in a tropical country will be able to bring a change so that we are recommending compost, we are recommending alternative inputs which are organic, but however it is set as a sort of a chemical industry which has promoted so much of chemicals, both in the form of fertilizers and pesticides, and now going into genetically modified seeds as well, is creating a lot of confusion in the minds of people as to what would be the nutrition and food security in the future.
I think one thing that you mentioned, adding organic residues, composts, crop residues, leaving them on the soil, etc., is one first measure that needs to be done generally to improve the carbon content, the organic matter content of the soil, as this improves generally fertility, provides structure to the soil, makes the soil resilient against erosion by wind or water. So this is generally something that needs to be done. And from my point of view, on almost all soils, this is very important. If you have a very specific micronutrient depletion, this might be necessary to add specifically. But this is not something that you do on each and every soil. It's something that you have to test the soil and see if there's a very specific depletion of specific micronutrient. But generally, this returning organic matter to the soil also returns a lot of nutrients back to the soil.
I will strongly believe on the second point, adding of this organic materials as such, because any ecological parameter will work on the laws of limiting factors, whether it is Liebig's law of minimum or whether it is Shelford's law of tolerance. Instead of going into diagnostic features of identifying which particular parameter is missing, providing enough nutrients to the soil itself, the soil will be able to pick up and grow proper food. What is the organic matter content of your soils?
This depends. In arable soils, it's between 1 and 2%, normally.
Unfortunately, our national average is 0.15%.
Yeah, that's much lower. I see that. Adding organic matter and organic residues to the soil feeds the soil microbiome and the soil fauna. And you have to feed the soil repeatedly. So to improve the organic matter content and building this up means to add organic matter regularly every year. It has to be part of the general management that you do. It doesn't help to do this once or twice, as most of the organic matter that you add is used as an energy source for the microbiome, the microorganisms. So they will produce CO2 from most of the carbon. Only a small part of that remains in the soil. But if you add organic matter regularly for a longer time period, you are able to increase the organic matter content with time. And so this has to be part of the yearly soil management. And this then has a lot of benefits for soil structure, also for nutrient content, also for the soil to be able to absorb other nutrients. So even if you fertilize the soil, you need the soil to be able to capture these materials. And this means you need to improve also the ion exchange capacity. And this you can do by adding organic matter.
Yours being a temperate country, because you have defined 4 seasons with you, you also have the fall season when you get a lot of organic matter. Whereas we here is a more tropical country, and getting enough amount of biomass becomes sometimes a limiting factor for us.
This is the same everywhere. The amount of organic matter that is available is limiting. But what we can just try to do is to leave as much organic residues, also crop residues on the soil, and do this continuously. I understand that, of course, you don't have these seasonalities that we have.
Yeah, but that becomes a practical difficulty as well. Like, for example, if I take Punjab, which is a very popular state and which is leading in agriculture, the moment they harvest wheat, they have very minimum time to sow paddy again. They do not have time to remove the biomass from there or allow the biomass to decompose. So they have the habit of burning away the biomass.
Yeah, I know. This is done in many countries. I know. Here, I think you need research to develop the management in a way that you can still have enough organic matter added to the soil. If you burn it, you add a little bit of charred material that's also beneficial for the soil, but it's not the same as leaving the crop residues. This is depending on the type of crops you have. Of course, you are right.
I like this point of yours where you said biomass is better than charred material.
In general, yes.
You know, everybody says biochar will replace, biochar can be good and this and that. Do you think that it can solve all the problems?
No, of course not. Biochar is one way of adding rather stable carbon to the soil. Depending on your management and the type of crops you grow, this can be helpful. I would not say do not add any biochar or do not burn the soil in general, but to produce a really active soil microbiome, they need to be fed with plant residues. This is what they kind of eat and decompose, and this needs to be developed. I understand that there may be little time to do that, but maybe there's options to develop that.
The need for carbon, is definitely essential. There's no doubt about it. There's no second thought about it. But making use of this, some industries have started thinking to make carbon credits out of agriculture. Carbon has become something like a Bitcoin, like anybody can market it up. But whether it will really benefit the farmer, I do not know. It's questionable because you require minimum some acreage of land or hectareage of land for that purpose. Small farmers, because India depends on many, many small and medium farmers, unlike in Western countries and European countries where you have huge farms. In which direction do you think that you are moving now with reference to your soil studies?
We try to keep the organic matter in the soil. This is probably not as relevant in India. I'm not sure, to be honest. But what we now observe is that the systems lose carbon because of the rising temperatures. With the seasonality that you have mentioned in Europe, this means you have, with the rising temperatures, a longer vegetation period, but it also means microbes are more active and decompose more carbon, which has to be compensated by more input because it's a kind of equilibrium. So if we do not add more carbon, we fear that we will even lose organic matter in our soils, especially in the agricultural soils. So there's first signs that this can be observed in field trials, that since 10 years we probably lose some carbon. So it's not only about increasing the organic matter content, but also mitigation of carbon losses. So we try, our soils are not in a very bad state if our farmers manage them correctly, and a lot of them do. So even then, we will observe a deterioration of the soils if we do not add organic matter now.
Yeah, but after the green revolution of the 60s, there have been unchecked addition of chemical fertilizers into our soils. Nobody told them where to stop. People told them add.
Yeah, we had the same. Yeah.
Same throughout the world. And to a large extent, I think Germany moved towards a bit of biodynamic farming, of also some amount of permaculture and activities like that in the European countries. And here we met towards composting and addition of compost. And today we are blending everything. We also use biodynamic, we use permaculture, we use natural farming, we use organic farming. various concepts we are trying to do, Professor. In fact, I have been working with earthworms and the need for earthworms in the soil, the speciality of endemic earthworms, how earthworms work in the soil, and how they indirectly induce larger microbial populations. But our main crop is paddy, especially South India. We use paddy. North we use wheat, but they also grow paddy. Unfortunately, a sort of a new concept has started saying that the more paddy you grow, you are producing more methane. And methane is responsible for climate change. Like because you are a microbiologist, Professor. What happens in a laboratory is different from what happens in the field condition. Is it necessary that nitrous oxides will keep accumulating, or microorganisms will act on nitrous oxides and convert them into nitrites and nitrates and beneficial materials? This is what happens in nature. You have all groups of microorganisms, the nitrate bacteria, the ammonifying bacteria. The whole nitrogen cycle operates over there. Do you think really paddy can be a problem of methanation? Do you think that cattle can be a cause for climate change when compared to all the industrialization that is happening in the world?
First of all, I have to say I'm not a microbiologist. I'm a soil chemist. But of course, many of the processes that we observe in soil, even when we can write down an equation for that, they are done by microbes. And they do all this production of methane and production of N2O, and both are gases that are relevant for the climate. I'm not sure if the paddy soil definitely has to have this very negative impact. Again, there is need for research in that. So initiatives that you try to grow rice in paddy conditions, but still use as less water as possible so that the soil is not saturated for a very long time. And this would reduce these problems.
We have some examples like systems of rice intensification. We call it as the SRI, cultivation of rice, where we don't flood the field with water.
So I think this has to be investigated and to see if this is feasible for large areas.
I saw you taking your students into the field and working, and we used to work in the fields, Professor. Today, the experiments are simulated inside laboratories. And do you really think that laboratory experiments will truly reflect what is happening in the field?
I did, during my scientific life, a lot of lab incubation experiments and so on. And you can learn a lot from these lab incubation experiments. But normally, a lab study is done or from my point of view, a lab study is reasonable when you keep a lot of things constant and you vary one parameter that you want to investigate. So you can learn a lot about processes and also process combinations. But finally, you have to go to the field. It can help you to design your field experiments then. But you have to do experiments in the field. Finally, I'm a fan of long-term field experiments. They are in trouble around the world because they are expensive, first of all, and time-consuming. But it doesn't help. Finally, you have to test your concepts in the field under natural conditions with the natural soil. So this is something that I think is very important. And I have taken my students to the field, also to paddy fields, not in India, but for example in Indonesia, also to see and to take real soil samples rather than just something that comes near to the really managed soil. So I think that's very important to go to the field.
Do you agree, Professor? Because I have a problem here which I face. Our governments produce a soil health card, which we give it to the farmers and to verify the soil health. And unfortunately, we have restricted to a few parameters like pH, electroconductivity, NPK, and 4 or 6 or 8 micronutrients, usually 6, like iron, zinc, boron, copper. In that way. But do you think that this truly reflects the health of the soil?
Soil health is a term that is come up in the last years and is adopted by everyone working on soils, and they all understand different things under the term of soil health. So I think it goes much beyond just nutrient content. It also goes beyond organic matter or carbon content. It goes to a system view of the soil that includes also an intact food web and the microbiome that is intact, the fauna that is there. Otherwise, just the parameters you mentioned, it's maybe an indicator for short-term fertility or productivity of the soil. So this is not bad to give the farmers advice to improve the fertility of soil, but it doesn't catch the systemic view of soil health.
That is where the entire detritus circuit should be considered. The entire rhizosphere zone, the entire population of organisms, the microbes, the microarthropods, the macroorganisms, the earthworms, they all put together the community which lives beneath the soil. Unless we improve the soil community, we would not be able to get it. I often tell Professor that supposing a lady who is pregnant, if the child has to grow healthy, you don't try to inject food to the baby, you try to take care of the mother. In the same way, if the crop has to grow well, we have to take care of the soil, not of the plant.
I agree that if the soil is healthy in a systemic view, then it's improving also crop yields and crop nutrient contents. And if you adopt such a management for a longer time, it's also something that is a long-term investment. A lot of things that you do for a soil to improve the management for a long-term perspective, not only for the next season crop. This is something where you can adjust. And of course, you have problems then with climate change or too hot temperatures or too less water or whatever you can have depending on the region. But the long-term fertility and productivity and the long-term carbon storage, this is what a management should intend.
So we should move from anthropocentric agriculture to ecocentric agriculture.
If you want to call it like this, maybe yes.
What do you think we can do for the future, Professor? Because, all our countries are facing that problem. Maybe if not today, because in plants, we get two varieties of plants, the C3 type and the C4 type of plants. The C3 plants are thermolabile, which means with increasing change in temperature due to climate change, we are going to suffer. The whole world is going to face a problem with rice and wheat. However, C4 plants are thermoresistant and millets come under them. India has a very rich diversity of millets with it. So maybe we should slowly start incorporating millets like pearl millet, you have grey millets, you have kodo millets, you have several varieties of millets. Whether we should slowly change our food habits so that we also improve our soils now itself with the climate change coming in. Because with climate change, we are going to face all these problems, and it's also going to have a huge stress, psychological stress on human beings. Because in case a farmer invests all the money and is not able to get returns or harvest, that is going to create sort of a psychological stress for the farmers, leading to some sort of domestic violence and things like that. In my context, in Indian context, I'm talking to you. So, do you think that it is right time that we also change our food habits, or rather than just changing our soils? Would that be something good in future? How do you foresee, Professor?
I would agree that if you diversify, this helps in many ways. The agricultural system becomes more resilient because if you have a drought or heavy rainfall or whatever that challenges your individual crop, the more diverse the crops are, the more resilient the system generally will be. So this is what we also consider in Europe, that with climate change and with more intensive droughts in summer, this is what we observe here, we have to diversify the crops. Of course, you need crops like rice or wheat that feed really the population. But this can be done with different crops, and of course we have to adjust generally our eating habits and the choice what we eat. I think this is something that needs to be done, because this then also changes the resilience of our complete food system.
But it will also, to some extent, improve the soil as well. When you go in for biodiversity of the crops, naturally the soil biome will improve. And with soil biome improvement, the soil health will improve automatically.
Yeah, I completely agree. This does not mean that you can forget about the soil. The soil is the basis all the time. Everywhere you have to take care that you manage the soil in a proper way, avoiding in other countries. We have still, even in Europe, a lot of problems with soil erosion. Although we know how we could improve that, how we could have less erosion. In Germany, it's mainly by water, but partly also by wind. So this doesn't change if we forget about the soil. The soil always has to be the basis. And then you start and have a look on the changing climatic conditions and what crops you could add to the ones that are already grown. This is my view.
Here we have this dry temperature, and adding too much of chemicals into it. Like the more salt you add, the soil goes dry. And weathering has almost removed most of the topsoil for us. And basically, Professor, I had a different view. Unfortunately, any agricultural university, they start teaching children as soil is a mineral matter. They don't give importance to the real life in the soil. They talk it as a non-living mineral matter. So I started describing it in a different way. I started telling that soil has a digestive system, because when an animal dies and you bury it into it, it completely decomposes. It's the microorganisms which do it. We also have microorganisms in our body, in the digestive system. So logically, soil has a digestive system. Soil has a respiratory system because it takes in oxygen, gives out carbon dioxide. So logically, it has a respiratory system. And you don't pull up the plant every day and feed the plant. You just put the water on the top or nutrients on the top, and it automatically goes inside. That means soil also has something logically like a circulatory system. If there are salts in the soil, it's brought up and emitted outside the soil. So soil logically has an excretory system. Any tissue culture plant requires to be planted in the soil to grow. So soil has a reproductive system. And finally, one university asked me, does soil have a brain? I told them that if you dig a pit and put any biomass into it, it decomposes. You dig a pit, you put seed into it, it germinates. So soil knows what it has to decompose, what it has to allow to germinate. So such a beautiful soil, once upon a time, had a rich fragrance in it, petrichor. Today we have lost the soil fragrance. We are losing topsoil like anything. And it takes a long time for topsoil to grow. So it's high time that the entire world joins together. Like we talk about COP, we talk about all these so-called big fancy names, but at the end of the day, we don't get any benefit out of it. But it's time that I think the world should unite to save our soils. SOS.
And I completely agree that soil should not be considered just as mineral matter. If you have, again, healthy soil, it has to have a certain amount of organic matter, and it has to have a living microbiome and active soil fauna. That's very important. Otherwise, the soil is reduced to a kind of sand pit where you add everything. This is how we treated soils for a long time when we started having the fertilizers that we could add to the soil. So we forgot about the rest and used the soil just for the roots to anchor in. But the soil can be much more, and the soil needs to be considered as a system, a living system with organic matter, with microbes and earthworms, other small soil animals that really act together. If you have this together, you have a living soil. Otherwise, it's just a mineral substrate.
The problem is people are confusing between living soil and life in the soil.
Maybe yes.
Yeah, that's the confusion which is making it. And Professor, many people feel that we don't require soil anymore. We can grow crops with hydroponics, we can grow crops with aquaponics or aeroponics, all these new concepts. They think that they will be able to provide food for the world. I don't think it will be possible. It can be possible for a small colony or a small little bit of area. But do you think that we will be able to provide food for the world with the help of hydroponics and aquaponics and aeroponics?
These are concepts that may help in the surroundings of larger cities, for example, or in the cities themselves. This can help, but it can't feed the total population. You need so much energy at the moment. If you have solved the energy problem, that may help. But even then, consider the areas that are under agriculture worldwide. And when you calculate that, it never works.
Maybe because we forgot our eco-types and we got interested in food from other places of the world. We are not very much happy with eco-types. In India, we would like to have kiwi fruits, we would like to have dragon fruit, and we would like to have durian from Malaysia. But we would not like to eat our own typical fruits like guava and other things which are growing over here. It has become a fancy now to eat exotic foods. Maybe that is one of the reasons again that we are trying to grow them again over here, thereby trying to tamper our own soils by adding more chemicals, more amount of pesticides, everything into it. Maybe that's also one of the reasons for spoiling our soils. As a general thumb rule, Professor, if your soil is acidic, I would recommend farmers to grow alkaline crops. And if your soil is alkaline, acid crops grow very well into it, because they try to compensate with each other. Similarly, when I want to grow fruits like sapota, I will grow a banana along with it because banana provides the potassium for it to grow automatically. Companion cropping, crop rotations, these were all beautiful concepts which kept the soil healthy. In India, there was a tradition that between two paddy crops, they will grow groundnuts, peanuts, because peanuts have rhizobium bacteria, which actually fixes enough nitrogen for the next crop. So that beautiful systems of crop rotation or companion cropping, all this we have lost over a period of time in our anxiety or in our eagerness to grow more of one type of food. So as you rightly said, diversity of crops will not only make our food habits stable, but it will also help soils sustain themselves in the course of time, so that the coming generation will be able to get some good soil for further growth of plants.
I agree that the crop rotation, this is also a way to diversify. So not only trying to have one crop in one region and the other crop in the other region, the diversity in the crop rotation also helps the individual soil to improve. And of course, any nitrogen fixing organisms or nitrogen fixing crop in a crop rotation is helpful. So this again means we probably need more research in that direction under the conditions of the changing climates.
Professor, I'm also worried because with all herbicide tolerant plants which are coming in now, HT, with glyphosates or glufosinate, I do not know how biodiversity will get completely affected, and not only the biodiversity of plants which will be growing, but also the soil microcosm, which will completely destroy the ecosystems. They are called as herbicide-tolerant plants, HT plants, through the genetically modifications, especially with Bacillus thuringiensis and other species.
Again, I think this is not the final solution to a healthy soil system and healthy food.
Has Germany accepted genetically modified seeds?
No.
We have accepted a few. We have accepted BT cotton, and people introduced it here in the name of its non-edible crop. But unfortunately, from cotton seeds, We prepare milk. We also make cottonseed milk. We prepare cottonseed oil. We prepare cottonseed oil cakes, which are fed to the cattle as well. Now they're trying to move into eggplant, mustards. They're trying to, like almost all sorts of food crops that are possible because corporatization of agriculture to a large extent, of owning the seeds. So that if you own the seed, then you own the crop. You own the crop, you own the world.
To be honest, not an expert on that, but I see all these problems that finally do not support the local farmer. And I think this is especially a problem when you have a lot of small individual farmers.
And it will also finally affect the soil because every crop, when it is modified, its secretory substances and exotic substances or excretory substances from the roots will modify the systems and the microbial changes may take place. The chemical formulation of the soil geochemistry will completely modify by itself.
This may be. I think, again, here we need more understanding. An important part of the whole soil system is the rhizosphere, where the plant roots interact with the soil. Normally, the exudates of a plant root improve soil structure and add to the stability and fertility of the soil. I'm all the time confident that we will be able to avoid this.
Why I'm trying to discuss about all this is maybe this podcast may be listened by a large number of youngsters who would like to do research on soils. These can give them potential projects on which they can work on in future.
There is enough questions we have for several generations of students to study soils. And I really loved studying soils. It's something that gives you, of course, a lot of results that you can transport and give back to the community, but it also gives you personal comfort. I really enjoyed studying soils.
I worked a lot on earthworms, on Indian earthworms, on diversity of earthworms, on vermicomposting technologies. What are the microbes in earthworms, the manures which are present, a variety of microbial diversity I've worked with. What happens to the chemistry of the soil? So I finally concluded that I would be working with the earthworms as long as I live. I'll be going through the earthworms as long as I live. And when I'm gone, they will go through me. And this sort of, I think, discussions will provoke a large group of youngsters to think and to come out with beautiful solutions for the next generation and the upcoming generation process. The soil fragrance should come back and plants should be healthy because healthy soils will give us healthy plants. Healthy plants will give healthy nutrients. Healthy plants will give healthy food. Healthy food will be provided for the entire biota, including human beings, because human beings are not separate from other organisms. And the whole planet should become healthy. That's the concept of One Health which is being brought in now. Hopefully, people like you and me will continue to strive, and hopefully our students would like to learn and take it further.
I completely agree.
Thank you, Professor. It was wonderful discussing with you. I think we had an hour of discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Origin Story, brought to you by the Goethe-Zentrum Hyderabad and EkoGalaxy, in collaboration with Roundglass Sustain. Don't miss many more such incredible conversations coming up right here. Like, share, follow and subscribe to the Goethe-Zentrum Hyderabad and EkoGalaxy. Thank you for your interest in our planet, biodiversity, and closely interlinked our own well-being. Thank you for listening.